we reflected on the devastating scandal with the former Perthshire sub-postmaster Chris Dawson and the legal academic Dr Andrew Tickell. So you were a postmaster for 3 years.
Yeah. How
did it go wrong?
In 2010, I can't remember the dates, my mind gets a wee bit confused with the dates. We had a input error. We'd done a lot of the banking for the local businesses, NatWest, etc. The nearest branch was down in Perth. It was easier for them to bank at the post office. The money had been inputted incorrectly. The Horizon keyboard, for some reason, had a 00 on it rather than just a 0. So instead of 3,200 getting put in, it was 32,000. Called that through on the helpline, and all right, it'll rectify itself within 6 weeks. So 6 weeks came and went. I think it was actually 8 weeks before it was rectified, but I noticed there was still 17,500 outstanding. Okay, right, give them another 6 weeks. And then time went on and I started sort of panicking. Right, where is this money?
Because you were liable to that, according to the post office.
I was liable for it, but because I'd just been waiting, I hadn't been declaring it, and I thought, right, I'm just going to have to start repaying this myself, and then if it turns up, I can get it back.
And had you any doubts about the Horizon system before then?
There had been whispers for a couple of years. In fact, prior to taking on the post office, I had been advised, watch their computer system. That was in 2007.
And this was from other sub-postmasters?
That was another sub-postmaster. Watched the computer system, there's something not right there.
So over the time then, and this 17,000 is outstanding, you're starting to pay it back yourself, and the post office, they started pursuing you?
They come in, they're entitled to come in and do an audit once a year. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. They did come in, and the discrepancy was there. I think it was about 15,000 by that time, because I'd paid back some of the money. Immediately suspended without pay.
And what got around the community that this is what happened? So what was that like for you?
I mean, they turned up at 8:30 on a Monday morning when everybody was due to come in for their pensions. Getting that sign on the door, closed until further notice.
So over the time then, how did that start to impact on you, that reputation?
Well, I had the retail business there anyway, so I wasn't allowed in my post office premises, but they were behind a bulletproof glass at the back of the room. So I still had my retail business, but even that became too much because people were coming in. Why are you not behind the post office counter? What's going on with the post office? And people were crossing the street to avoid you. People that I'd known for years not talking to me.
So you didn't have community support? They thought you were guilty?
I had some from some people, but to be perfectly honest, one person, because you were just one person. What the drama had said about being told you're the only person, it was very, very much true. And you're going up against a 300-year-old organisation with the backing of the government. So just when you mention government, Andrew, I can bring you in here. We're hearing today that the UK and Scottish governments are looking at actions to overturn wrongful convictions. And I know Chris wasn't wrongfully convicted, but there have been so many wrongful convictions. What's standing in the way of that?
Well, there are already some people who have successfully cleared their name. In Scotland, we have just 2 people who were prosecuted whose convictions have been quashed. In England, it's approaching, I think, around 100 at this stage. There's really a couple of things. One is how fast this is happening, that it's taking a very long time for cases to result in convictions being quashed. And there is also in England an anxiety that the threshold may be too high for postmasters who are impacted by Horizon to have their convictions cleared.
So how does the situation in Scotland differ from England?
In a range of different ways. So firstly, one of the big dimensions of this scandal is that in England and Wales, the post office prosecuted. They were the victims of these alleged shortfalls. They were the people with a financial interest in demanding you give them £17,000. And they were the ones that said, if you plead guilty to this crime, we won't prosecute you for theft and maybe you won't go to prison. So that is one of the clear leading dimensions of this in England and Wales. But in Scotland, they do not have the power to prosecute. So here, where sub-postmasters in Scottish constituencies were prosecuted, it was the Crown Office and Procurator Fiscal Service who are independent prosecutors, but we don't know what they were told. We don't know what they knew about Horizon. We don't know at this moment how many sub-postmasters were prosecuted. Just in December, a letter was revealed which said there may be up to 100. But as it stands, 2 people have had their convictions quashed, and at the moment the court is looking, I think, at just 7 of these cases so far.
What you've been hearing Andrew saying there, Chris, does that resonate with you?
Yeah, I mean, I do feel there's a lot more people out there, but it was made very clear to me at the time that the Post Office did have the authority to prosecute me. I was denied legal representation. I wasn't allowed a lawyer, and which still baffles me to this day how that's even possible.
Now, you weren't convicted, but and eventually they let it go, essentially.
Yeah. Initially, I was calling up daily, how's the investigation going? And then it sort of lapsed onto weekly. And then come the December 2010, I phoned up and how's the investigation going? Oh, we've closed the investigation. Oh, all right, okay, when can I get the keys back to the post office? You need to pay the 17,500.
Right, so there was never any conviction, there was never nothing.
Because of the terms of your contract, the post office make you sign a contract saying that you are responsible for any and all shortfalls.
And they have that power, Andrew. They can.
In terms of the contract, yeah, they set up the contract to say that basically any money that's missing is your liability to them, and that's the real hook for this. This is why so many people find themselves in this really desperate situation, that if you don't pay, tomorrow your shop isn't opening, your post office isn't opening. So this is an ongoing threat on a daily basis of anxiety. It must have been an appalling position.
The stress levels and anxiety levels for myself and for my family were horrendous.
And you've ended up, because of that stress, you've lost your home, your marriage.
Yep, I had 2 post offices, the one in Perthshire, the one in Kinlochran. I had a large, successful toy and gift shop that was making very, very good profits. I lost all 3, the house, the marriage collapsed, I mean, even down to the car, and trying to find employment thereafter, because Perthshire is a very touristy town, it's very money, cash orientated. So trying to find employment after that was very, very difficult.
And you've had to leave Perthshire?
I've not had to leave Perthshire. Last year, I was in the local supermarket and I overheard 2 people as I was going down one of the aisles going, "That's him that stole money for the post office." And I just thought, do you know what, after 13 and a half years, with the publicity there's been about the post office, if you're still whispering about me, after 30 years in Perthshire, no.
And Andrew, do you get a sense of the public anger over all of this?
Just listen to that. You know, it's heartbreaking and it just makes me furious. You know, because it's so important. So much of the discussion around this is rightly focusing on people who were convicted, and people were sent to prison, including in Scotland, and that is a deprivation of their liberty, which is extreme. But fundamentally, there are hundreds of people like you whose lives were ruined by the post office, who were deprived of their homes, their reputation, their livelihood, their good names in their community. And it's like that. All of these people were brought into this. It's not simply the post office who directly enforced all of this harm. They seeded it throughout communities across the country. Often small towns. If you look at the people that we know were affected in Scotland, they were in small towns, in small locations. That was also in the Alan Bates drama to an extent. The fact that these are small communities that evoke probably an idea of Middle England above everything else that partly explains why this drama has been so recognisable for people. But the scandal is that you've destroyed people's lives, and you don't have to send people to prison to destroy their lives. All you need to do is destroy their standing in the community.
Yeah. And Chris, we heard today the former Post Office Chief Executive, Paula Vennells, who oversaw much of this, is handing back her CBE. Does that give you any comfort?
It gives me a huge amount of comfort. I mean, I'm 110% delighted.
And what's likely to happen, Andrew? Where's this going to go?
Well, we've got the inquiry, which is ongoing, so we're finishing up stage 4 at this point and going into stage 5, which has thus far this year been looking a lot at the kind of middle, not even the managers, but the people who dealt with the legalities of this, who didn't disclose critical information, because that's really at the core of this scandal. This is often described as a scandal about computer failure, but it's not computer failure alone. It's the fact that when people in the post office knew or ought to have known that Horizon did not work, they decided not to tell anyone about this, decided to deny for years and years and years to individual postmasters, to their lawyers, to courts, that there were problems. You know, this is a scandal which has the big civil case which determined this in 2019, the 555 case, and the first convictions are vacated in 2021. In Scotland, we're told by the Crown Office now that they expect, once we get a big Scottish judgment on this, that the pace of change and challenge to those existing convictions will increase exponentially, they say. If they think 100 people are affected, and Scotland, they say, is nearer the beginning of addressing this miscarriage of justice than we are in England, then we have to hope that exponential means quickly as well, because this has dragged on far too long.
And Chris, where is your life now?
I'm back living in my hometown, Cumnock in Ayrshire, and to be perfectly honest, I'm staying with my brother just until everything is redressed with the post office. I mean, having to start again at 50-year-old is lunacy, having had to fight this for the past 14 years. But there is light at the end of the tunnel. I'm just hoping that they reckon there's about 650 people that were prosecuted throughout the island that haven't came forward, that have been so badly affected by what the post office did to them. They've not came forward to have their convictions quashed, and I would really like to see the people come forward.
And thank you for sharing your story with us.
No
Sure
problem
appreciate
at
it.
all.
Andrew, thank you for joining us as well. Thank you.
Okay.